So, just by a show of hands, how many of you in your buildings have some kind of video camera, security camera system? So, all right. It seems like most people already have it, which is kind of interesting, but not all that surprising. The first page of my presentation, I just went to the couple of main reasons why people, buildings or people want to get security cameras. It's either because something has happened, or you're afraid that something's going to happen. So either deterrence of crimes, you don't want something to happen, or you want to have a system where you can get evidence, where you can catch the people after a crime has occurred. And I just say that, it seems kind of obvious, but I say that just to keep it in mind, because I think it helps to just have that in your head when you're thinking about all the other issues that can come up when you're talking about security cameras. The main issue in terms of security systems, security cameras, is right to privacy. That's, from a legal standpoint, that's the main issue. That the right to privacy means invasions of privacy, whether it's through eavesdropping, wiretapping, tampering with private communications, unlawful surveillance, are prohibited. So basically, you can't film somebody where they have a reasonable expectation of privacy. In other words, you can't place a security camera in a shareholder or unit owner's apartment. That's somewhere where they can expect to have privacy. The common areas are not somewhere where you would expect to have privacy. So hallways, lobbies, stairwells, elevators, laundry areas, common parking areas, those are not areas where people expect to have privacy. Parking areas can be a little difficult because I know some buildings have garages where shareholders or unit owners have their own specific isolated garage, so that might be a different story. But the common areas, you don't have an expectation of privacy when you're in a common area. So of course that's the areas where you can place security cameras and should. So like I said, you can install them in common areas, you can record video. You should have a policy, you should discuss as a board, have a policy about that, and specifically about keeping the recordings secure and the access to the cameras secure. This should not be something that just anybody can go access. So all of that, all of the equipment and the recording should be in a secure place, and you should have a policy about who's allowed to access them, when they can access them. So again, you have to be careful with the right to privacy. You don't want to, you don't want to have a camera that's positioned to somebody's, where it's showing inside somebody's apartment. And we talk about discrimination a lot in many different areas of cooperatives and condominiums, whether it's the interview process, other things. Well, it comes into play here too. You can't discriminate, you can't use cameras as a way of discriminating against somebody. So, whether it's any of the protected classes, you can't decide that you're gonna video, just those people or just that class of people, or you're only gonna do one floor and not another floor. You have to, you have to have a policy, and you have to, if you're going to install security cameras, or they should be done in a way where you're not discriminating against anybody, everybody's being treated equally. You're not allowed to record audio. The basic reason for this is people can record audio if one of the people to the recording has knowledge of it. But if you set up a video camera, you're going to record somebody. If you record audio, then the person, there's nobody that's involved in the recording when it's happening that's aware of it. So don't record audio. That's a pretty easy one. I think most of the systems probably don't anyway, but
I don't understand why you can't record audio.
the law, when it comes to recording audio, it has to do with eavesdropping and wiretapping. One of the parties to it, one of the people involved in the actual recording, had
Common area? This is common area.
just in general, when it comes to recording audio, forget about the whole common area issue. When it comes to recording audio, if I want to go up to you and I want to record a conversation, you don't necessarily have to be aware that it's being recorded, but I'm aware, and I'm a party to the conversation. So if you're recording audio, the law is that somebody has to be aware of the fact that the audio is being recorded. So I would stay away from recording audio. I mean, because you're assuming that if you post it, they're going to see it. I mean, it's not, like I said, I doubt it's an issue because I think most of the systems probably don't record audio anyway, but I wouldn't take the risk. It just doesn't seem worth it. You're not really gaining anything by recording audio. What you're doing when you're installing a security camera, you're doing it to either protect, to deter people from committing crimes or to have evidence after they've committed the crime. If somebody, puts crazy glue in somebody's lock or somebody breaks into somebody's apartment, the audio is kind of irrelevant. You're seeing them actually doing it. So that's where the evidence is. It's not so much the audio part that's important there. And I think the benefit is outweighed by the risks. So there are times where cooperatives and condominiums might have a duty to install cameras, and that gets to when the building has it, like I said before, the reasons for why we install them. If you've had certain issues with crimes being committed, things like that, you've experienced that activity, then you may have a duty to actually install a camera. You would have to take, if you see crimes being committed, if there's a pattern of some kind, then the board has a duty to look into it and do what it thinks is best to try to mitigate that and prevent it from happening in the future. And the obvious answer would be install a security camera system, or some kind of security system. It might be that, maybe get a doorman. Obviously, that's probably not as cost effective as installing a security camera system, but it's just by way of saying that it doesn't have to be a security camera system, but if you're experiencing, that pattern of behavior, you would have a duty to do something, and that's usually, the first thing that a lot of places think about, as you can tell by the fact that most people here raise their hand when talking about do you have a system. And the other thing to keep in mind is once you have a system, you have a certain duty to make sure that you're maintaining it, that the installation was proper, that it's maintained, kept up to date. You can't just install it and then forget about it. You got to make sure that it continues to be working. Now, like I said before, who can view the footage? As I mentioned, the board should have a policy. Usually the board or select members of the board, could view it at any time that they feel is necessary. Another to think about is the board or management when there's been an incident. Usually most systems, I'm sure you'll hear, most systems have some amount of backup recording. And sometimes you might be subpoenaed, the court might subpoena it already, or you might need it in a litigation. If you have a situation with a shareholder and you need to bring a holdover for bad acts, you can use it in those legal proceedings. There might be situations where if a crime has occurred, the police need to view it, and then you can let the police view it. But like I said, this shouldn't be something that's open to all the residents whenever they want to see it, just because they want to go and watch people. There also with one of the things that's become popular recently is the Ring doorbells that have the doorbell cameras. That's started to become popular. That's something that you may have to address and think about whether you want to allow people to have. Again, if you're going to allow people to have it, then you need to keep in mind that you can't discriminate. So if you're going to have a policy and you're going to allow one person to have it, you have to make sure that you allow basically everybody to have it.
Can you explain what that is?
Like a doorbell camera. So there's doorbells you can get now that have a camera built into it, so it looks out. So when somebody comes to your door and presses it, you can from your phone see who it is that's standing at your door. The issue in a lot of buildings is that the camera might have a range of surveillance that gets common area, which might be okay, but you might run into an issue if it's also then surveilling inside somebody else's apartment whenever they open their door. So you have to, it's going to kind of be a case-by-case basis. Might not work for everybody. The board might say, no, we don't want to deal with that. But at the same time, the board may feel it's okay. But you have to look at each situation and make sure that it's okay in that situation. It shouldn't provide a view of your neighbor's door. I see you. I'm going to get to you in a minute. Let me just, it shouldn't provide a view of the rest of the hallway or elevator areas. It should just be the view right outside your doorway. So, and again, you shouldn't discriminate in any way. And you have to talk to your attorney, look in your documents, make sure it doesn't violate any rules that you might have in your rules or in your bylaws. There was a
Yes, sir.
question back?
Those also record audio, right?
I don't know.
Yes.
If they do, that's something you would have to consider.
Well, if they don't record, you can just have a conversation.
I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing other things that they don't record. They allow you to have conversations, but I don't know. But that's something that I guess you have to consider. And when somebody asks, you have to get information on the particular system that they want to install.
Dan, if I could interrupt, we're going to hold off on any further questions until each of our speakers has made his respective presentation, and then we'll have ample time for any additional questions. Thank you.
Okay. The last area that I want to cover is fake cameras. I generally think it's a bad idea. If there is a known risk, then you have then you may have a duty, like I said before, to take measures to protect your residents and their property. The fake cameras, they give a false sense of security, and there have been cases where there's been liability where people thought that there was real cameras and there weren't. They turned out to be fake. They believed that there was real cameras. They had, they didn't take precautions that they may have taken if they had known that they weren't real cameras. Things like that. Telling residents doesn't really help, because then you have to worry about every time there's new residents, making sure they know, keeping up to date with that. And then inevitably, if you have a fake camera and you've told residents, word is going to spread to people outside that they're not real, and then it defeats the purpose. And also, some people that are versed in the technologies can tell the difference between a fake camera and a real camera. So again, that kind of defeats the purpose. In terms of the board's decision of whether or not to get cameras, or whether to get cameras if you get them, that's something that is usually covered by the business judgment rules. So if the board decides it's a good idea to get cameras, the court is not going to look behind that and say, we disagree, you shouldn't have gotten cameras. If the board has a business judgment reason, they whatever the reason is, that's enough. So, if that's your decision, that you feel that it's better security and you want to get it, the court, not every shareholder or unit owner may like it, but the court's not going to look behind that and disagree with what you want to do or what you did. And that's it for now. Last question?
Thank you, Daniel. Our next speaker is Thad McEwen. Thad is a well-known representative of integrated protection systems. He recently addressed one of these issues, or several of these issues, on one of our radio shows. So please welcome Thad McEwen, Integrated Protection Systems.
Well, thank you. I'm only going to take a couple of minutes of your time. I'm glad to see that there are a lot of camera systems out there in the audience. What I would ask you is your camera system sufficient? Do you see the things you want to see and you need to see? Is the video quality good? A lot of systems have been out there for 10 years, 15 years. You start to see DVRs wear out. The DVR contains a hard drive and it basically runs 24 hours a day. So things start to break down. The good news is most camera systems are expandable and they're upgradable. And it doesn't have to be blow everything up and start all over again. You can start with a new head end. You can use existing cables. You can encode analog signals and make them digital. A lot of different things you can do. So have the conversation with whoever your provider is. Don't think you're stuck with what you have. You can always improve your system. If you don't have a system and you want to install one, the best piece of advice I can give you is have clear goals. Do you understand what you need to see? And the difficulty is if you're dealing with a board and you ask 6 people on the board what they want to see or what's important, you'll get 6 different opinions. But, is it someone using your dumpster late at night? The snowplow guy is supposed to be there twice a day in a snowstorm. Is he only coming once? Do you have a blind alleyway that you want to cover where things untoward might be going on? Do you want to protect yourself against a slip and fall claim by covering the front sidewalk? So understand what's important to you and what you want to see, and that way you can design the right system. And you can design it with the right views and the right equipment, and you won't end up wasting your money. If you had an unlimited budget, you could turn your building into a Las Vegas casino, but not many people have an unlimited budget. So think about it, talk to an expert, get some ideas, talk it through thoroughly before you do anything, and you'll end up with the right system.
Thank you, Thad. Pat Clare is certainly no stranger to our memberships. He has spoken at several BRI and CCAC membership meetings in the past. Please welcome Pat Clare of Levitt Fuirst Associates, which again is the insurance manager for the CCAC and the Building and Realty Institute. Pat, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I was asked to address cameras and video systems from an insurance point of view. Ideally, and Dan mentioned it, the initial installation of cameras is there to deter something, crime or something along those lines. From an insurance point of view, it's usually on the back end. Something has happened and we need proof or evidence. Over the past 15 years, adjusters that are looking at claims that you have, either bodily injury, property damage, vandalism, something along those lines. In the old days, they would say, did anybody see? Is there an eyewitness? Give me a name, give me a number. Let's see, if we can contact the eyewitness. Today, one of the first questions that adjusters ask is, do they have a video system? Do they have it filmed? So it's there for, and trust me, we get lawsuits, multiple, every single solitary day. And there are slip and falls, vandalism, property damage, they're across the board. And now we are actually starting files where we're keeping video for each and every claim, if there is video there. So it helps tremendously, believe it or not. Some of the slip and fall and liability claims that we see, they're fake, shocking. But people are injured or claim they're injured, and then we show them a video, or the adjuster shows them a video, and their story changes a little bit. So I've seen it, a good percentage of the time be very, very helpful in settling particularly bodily injuries, slips and falls. Most common lawsuit we see, somebody slipped and fell on somebody's property, it was icy, it was this. So if also, as far as saving videos, there's all sorts of different guidelines out there. 30 days, here ridiculous, number of years. Most times that's doesn't make sense financially or even for storage. So what we would recommend is if you do have an incident where somebody slips and falls, please, if you do have video, see if you have that filmed and save that particular occurrence. Because if the claim does continue and it turns out that it's going to look, looks like it's going to be a big claim, 9 times out of 10, the adjuster handling the claim is going to fail. or going to ask, rather. The other thing we hear over and over again is, if we spend the money and put in a video system, is my insurance, will our insurance go down? Are there credits? Are there savings that can be realized? Today, the sad answer is no. Again, this is something new. Insurance companies are giant dinosaurs and do not move quickly. I don't know if 6 months from now, a year from now, or 6 years from now, that would be true. But I can tell you, every single application that we have pertaining to multiple unit dwellings always asks, is there a security system, and they want to know the extent. If it's video camera, if it's key access or fobs or something along those lines. So at worst, what it will show to an insurance company, if you do have a video surveillance camera, is that you're a proactive building, and if they're on the on the fence trying to decide whether this is a risk they're looking to insure or not, sometimes that will put them over on the good side. So, like I said, it's very limited from an insurance perspective now, but it's something that will become, much more demanding in the future, because the claims are just mounting and mounting. This will deter, as Dan said, it will act as a deterrent, but in the back end, it will act as proof to plead your case one way or the other. Okay, thank you very much.
Many of you might remember, whenever I hear our colleagues from the insurance industry talk about all this, I think of the line in The Fortune Cookie. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie, where Walter Matthau plays the shyster lawyer, and he's talking to one of his clients who slipped on a banana peel in front of Louis' hot dog stand, and he says, can I get some money out of this? And Walter Matthau says, before I get through with that hot dog stand, I'll be begging for mercy. But then he says, couldn't you have dragged yourself 50 feet in front of Macy's? But anyway. But this is my way of saying, cameras really do help. One of our member co-ops from Peekskill called, and unfortunately could not make the meeting tonight, but was relating their experience. The president was relating his experience with cameras and how they have, proved fraud. People claiming they fell or hurt themselves, whatever. And then, there's candid camera up there, and smile, you're on candid camera, and they haven't got a leg to stand on, no pun intended, But anyway, we're open for questions for our panel. Anybody? Yes? Please. When you're called upon, stand up, enunciate, and just identify yourself and where you're from.
And here's your mic.
I don't need a mic.
She doesn't need her mic, okay.
I don't think so. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
My name is Jennifer, and I'm on the board of the Celebrate at 121 North Broadway, and I have a number of questions for Dan.
You're limited to two now. You're limited to two questions, and then we'll have
Your
to.
presentation was very focused on buildings that were buildings. We are a multi-unit garden apartment development, and we were particularly interested in your presentation because we've been having increasing, I don't know if you call it trespassers, because we have an alleged easement, which we have to verify that it's actually an easement, and we can't really figure out how we could put in cameras in a cost-effective way. But in terms of the duty to install, if we have been notified by residents that they felt threatened because there were strange people at night near the dumpsters or vagrants pissing in the barbecue area, what is our potential liability?
That's an interesting question. It's tough because on the one hand, your residents, there's a certain degree of, a certain expectation of security and of their welfare. On the other hand, you have to balance it with, do you think the fact that you install a security camera is going to actually do anything to prevent the type of situation that you're talking about? you know, when you're describing vagrants that are urinating in the bushes or whatever, those don't sound to me like the kind of people that are concerned by the fact that they might be caught on camera. And so, you know, that's something that,
Residents, you know, in my opinion,
Right.
overreact.
I mean, look, I can't say if somebody's overreacting or not, if they're feeling threatened, but, you know, there are certain things where if somebody, you know, if somebody's trespassing and you can identify it, then, you know, then they should call the police. I mean, there are certain, you know, there's certain situations, especially when it's out, more of an outdoors type of situation like you're talking about, where, you know, that's a situation where you call the police, because I'm not sure that, I mean, look, you have to, you know your actual layout, you can talk to your attorney, but, you know your layout, you're gonna have to analyze it and determine, you know, if you think that, like I said, if you think that you know, the cost benefit, if you think that it's actually gonna do anything to deter those people, you know, and if it's a situation you're at night, I mean, I don't know the technology, I guess you can speak to it more than I can, if where they're going, if you'd be able to have a camera that would actually be able to catch them and identify them. If not, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're always only going to be catching like the back of their head, then, you know, so there, you know, and then the other question is there another, you know, maybe there's another better way to secure the facility, right? Lighting and, you know, maybe fencing or something like that. Maybe there's that type of, you know, it doesn't always have to be a camera, but.
The reason that it was particularly interesting to us is that we were talking about this is because residents have asked us to install cameras, and even the fake cameras.
Right.
We told them we can't do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't do the fake cameras, but, you know, look, I'm sure there's a system that you know, that somebody might be able to design that might fit some of the needs. But like I said, you know, if they're asking and they're asking about the security, then yeah, I think you need to look into it and address it. But that might not necessarily mean definitively that you're going to install cameras. It might, but it might not. Maybe, like I said, like we're talking about, maybe there's other things. Maybe there's lighting. Maybe there's fencing to secure the property. You know, things like that might also address the situation, and then you can always revisit it. If that doesn't work, then maybe you can install a couple of cameras.
Do you want to add to that in terms of the technology that might be available?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly are cameras that can see in the dark. They have IR illuminators, and perfect clarity. You'll be able to identify anybody or anything that's going on. But, you know, look, I sell cameras, and I will tell you the first thing to do is put in lights. That's probably more of a deterrent, because if it's dark back there, the perpetrators or whoever they are, whatever they're doing, they can't see the camera, so they don't know what's there. It's not going to deter them.
That's exactly what I suggested.
Years ago, Con Edison, I guess, hopefully that's not a bad word these days, they're not helping us over there. Con Edison used to have an advertising campaign to stop a thief, light a light. So back in 1967, my father puts lights all around the apartment. We had an apartment in a Victorian house with a wraparound porch. The very next day we were robbed. So,
They lit their way.
yes, Dory, and identify thyself and thy co-op.
Dory Angley, Hilltop Terrace. I think this is an insurance question. You said you have a lot of claims, you know, daily. What if our backup system is only 30 to 60 days? How often or how fast do people make a claim on a slip and fall? What if they wait 6 months and we no longer have the video? Or is it normally immediate?
You lawsuits, Dan, you'll be able to help me out in here. The period of time that they can bring a suit after an injury, I think is 3 years. So, you know, ideally, someone can slip and fall today, and they have 3 years to bring that suit. The best, like I said, if you are aware of a slip and fall, save that particular time slot of that particular slip and fall. And then, I know, 30 days, 60 days, 3 years doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're not aware of it, if you're not aware of it, then there's nothing you can do. If they decide to wait 3 years, I don't know many buildings that have a 3-year backup.
That's why I was wondering, insurance-wise, do they normally wait?
Look, most people, if they have a slip and fall, they're gonna tell somebody, pretty quickly. And especially if they know the building has cameras, then they're gonna tell them because they're gonna wanna get it on camera. It doesn't mean all people, but, that does happen. But there's not, if they're gonna wait 3 years, if they're gonna wait 2 years and 11 months to, bring their claim and file their complaint, then there's nothing you can do about it. But, like Pat said, if you're aware of an incident that happened, if you're aware that an incident occurred, then you should, download that particular footage, save that footage from that incident, and, download it to the hard drive, or download it to a DVD, whatever, somehow download a big copy of it and store it somewhere so you have it just in case, the incident happened. And that goes for anything, whether it's a slip and fall or any type of incident where you think, a particular incident's occurred and you think that at some point there might be the need for that footage, save it.
Okay, thank you.
And Dory, if you're aware of a slip and fall, typically what you would do is notify your broker of the possibility of a claim, and then with that notice to your broker, send the video. Then they have it, and then if the claim develops, bingo, they've got it stored for you. Or if the claim doesn't develop, it ends up being filed somewhere.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Millan, Bronxville Garden Co-op Apartments. That's a question for Dan. When you were talking about the policy of who could view the videos, you didn't mention the super, and I'm just curious as to whether most co-ops give their super complete access to the videos.
I don't know most, it's up to the co-op, super, they can be very different depending on the building. Some, and what they do, what their, kind of purview is in that regard. It just depends on the building, and it depends on how comfortable you are with your super. I said managing agent because that's ultimately the person that you hire that's responsible for, for supervising the staff and whatever, and presumably you have a certain level of comfort with the managing agent that you trust them. Which is not to say that you couldn't authorize your super to view the, the footage, but typically if you have an incident, the person that's ultimately going to be dealing with the incident is not going to be the super, it's going to be the managing agent. So again, you could, if you want to, if you trust your super, you can. I'm just not sure, the reason in terms of, what are they going to do? If there's an incident, they're going to view the footage. They're not going to be the one that's going to go dealing with the insurance companies or dealing with the, the shareholders or unit owners. That's the managing agent's job. So.
A couple of questions. I have an apartment building rather than a condo or a complex. So,
Hang on, we gotta get you the mic, Gene.
okay.
Thank you, Gene.
Hi. I have an apartment building, so this is not related to co-op or condo, but the concepts are similar. I have two questions. The first question has to do with obligation to notify. Before we install, do we have to get approval from the tenants? That's question one. In other words, do we need to send them a notice asking if they have any questions, concerns? So notification is question one. Question two, and this is the more difficult one. What if you observe some illegal activity, for instance, drug dealing or prostitution?
Is that why you
Is it the obligated? Are we obligated to notify the police? I haven't heard anything at all about what do you do with the footage that you see that indicates criminal activity.
I think, to go in reverse order, I think it would be the same thing as if you just happen to witness, something of that nature. As I think, I don't think there's a law that says you have to notify the police, but I think it's probably a pretty good idea. If you see drug dealing, if you see prostitution, like a crime occurring, I don't really see what the downside is to notifying the police. I can see the upside is you get rid of the crime, you get rid of whoever the person is that's doing those illegal activities. So I'm not really sure where the downside is to notifying the police. And I suppose there could be liability if you're aware of, if you're aware of criminal activity and you can take and, you have an easy thing that you can do to at least try to stop it, and, which is tell the police, not saying take it in your own hands, but you can tell the police and you don't do it, and then one of the tenants gets injured or gets, somehow hurt or something, I could potentially see that there might be some liability. I'm not, I can't tell you what would happen if that case went to a judge or a jury, but, you never know. In terms of your first question, I don't think you have to get your tenant's permission. It would be like if you installed an intercom system and you ran buzzers to all the apartments. It's not to say that you can charge them for it, but there's certainly, you don't have to get their permission to do it. You're adding security to the building. I think the same principle applies in terms of the right to privacy. You can't position the cameras in a way where they're going to look into the tenant's apartments. You would have to stay in the common areas.
Just want to add something to that. I did some research, prior to speaking this evening, and just want to read you something that addresses the crime issue, and it says, condominium and HOA boards should take advantage of two resources that are readily available and at no charge. The local police with regard to criminal activity, and your insurance agent for property damage and loss prevention with regard to the property that might not rise to the level of a criminal investigation. The police are there for personal safety and use them as an available and free resource. So, the recommendation is you suspect, or you think there might be some criminal activity, call the police, let them know, they'll take it from there.
Good evening, I'm Carrie Hollander with A.G. Williams Painting Company, and coincidentally with Deerfield Ponds HOA. We have security cameras where I am, so I have a situational question. What if there's a report of vandalism, but we don't know the date? It happened within the last 36 hours. Who typically reviews 36 hours of videos? Is it the management company? Is it the insurance company? Is it the authority? That's a lot of hours.
The short answer is yes. I don't mean to make fun of it, but it depends on the building. I have one building where, obviously if you can narrow it down, that would help. It depends on the building. Something that's that broad a time range, you might need more than one person to help review it. But I would say it's generally, the obligation of the board and the management to figure that out, and they might have to help out. I have one building where they do use their system to reveal when there's violations. Like, for example, they have a garbage chute, and they had problems with people putting things down the garbage chute that aren't supposed to be put down the garbage chute. So in that case, when it happens, they generally know from the super about what time it happened. So for them, it's pretty easy for them to go back in the footage, and they can see the person, walking in the garbage room with a huge box that, isn't supposed to go down there, and they know that's the box that was shoved in and caused the problem, or whatever it is. So they've used it, and they've been able to use it to identify those people. When it's 36 hours, that becomes more difficult, but,
I'll just add that, these days, most cameras record on motion, so 36 hours isn't really that much video that you're going to have to see, and you don't have to review it at real speed. You just speed it up and run through it, so it would take a little time, but it doesn't have to be crazy.
Yes, stand up and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Geraldine Gall from Longview Terrace. Dan, I have a question on who can view footage. Your last point, you say only provide access for good cause, store in secure location, and advise occupants of installation and locations. Do you have to advise them of the locations? Or is this just a suggestion?
It's, suggestion. I don't think there's not really a law that says that I don't think there's a law that says that you have to advise them. But again, it's, look at the downside. If you want a deterrent, then if people know it's there, they're less likely to do something bad if they know that they're on camera. So as in terms of deterring, crimes and
Yes, but
bads.
they can avoid the camera too, if they know where it is.
That's true. It depends on how widespread your system is, I guess, and, you could advise them that you have a security system, but not tell them where they are. I mean, look, ultimately, people, if they notice that there's one camera, then they're gonna look, if they really wanna do something bad, if they're that type of person, they can go around, they'll find out where the cameras are, they can avoid them anyway.
No, I can understand you advising them of the installations. I was just wondering if you had to tell them about the specific locations, what's being covered.
Yeah, I mean, this is all, suggestions based on my research that I did. It's again, every building is kind of different. So, for your specific building, you should talk to your attorney and maybe, talk to the person who manages or maintains your system, and see how widespread, or see, what you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one quick question.
All right, yes, the reason why we'll get you, you need a mic. Jeff, could you give the
Absolutely.
The reason why I'm giving Celebrate another bite at the apple is not only in addition to our colleague, Joe McCarthy, but also one of our founders and a very dear friend of many of us here, Herb and Connie Butler, whom you may remember, lived at the Celebrate for years, and it was my distinct pleasure to be invited. And I happen to love that co-op. I love the garden department, but you're in a tough spot because you're sandwiched between Church Street and North Broadway. And
Yes.
it's the crossroads of the world, but anyway.
Yes. So my question, which is really related to my previous questions, was if we are notified by a shareholder that they are frightened in our co-op development, because we are multiple buildings, not one building, are we obligated to inform all the residents? We seem to have a disagreement because we've had these vagrants, and then we had somebody loitering around our dumpsters. Do we have to send a letter to the co-ops? Are we exposing ourselves to potential liability if something should happen to somebody if we don't notify everybody?
We've got the legal and insurance.
Yeah, it's a legal and an insurance
Legal and insurance experts conferring here.
I think if they've addressed it, I don't know about the notification part, but if people complain about a situation and you as a board choose to do nothing, and then something happens, as we know, those board minutes are subpoenaable, if that's a word. Yeah, so I think from an insurance point of view, you would look to be pretty negligent if they said, we've got concerns, oh, don't worry about it, you're overreacting, and then God forbid something happens. I think you'd have a very tough battle in court winning that.
But if, for example, in one of these are two separate incidents, in the case where a young woman felt threatened because somebody was loitering around near her garage, of course, we decided we'd install lights, and her husband came to the board meeting and was going on and on about cameras and fake cameras, and we explained that it wasn't really feasible to do this, but we could do lights. That would be in the minutes. I mean, do we have to notify everybody that there was somebody, a potential incident, you know?
It depends on, I don't think there's an answer that I could give you for every situation, it's not a case, but it depends on, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, how serious the threat is, if it's something that's repeated, is something, if there's a situation where you get this threat that this person's been there, a number of times or whatever, then it might be something that you should notify everybody about, but it depends on, each situation is going to be different. If you got a complaint and you addressed it, then I'm not sure, how much farther you have to go, but if there's something that in reviewing the situation that you feel there is a legitimate concern, or there's a concern that it might happen again, that, that this, that the action or whatever it is might be repeated, and that it's something where it could end up, where somebody could end up getting hurt as a result, or, impacted in some way, then I would say, yeah, it's probably a good idea to send out a memo to your fellow residents, letting them know of the situation.
I want to go back to something.
Wasn't an unequivocal answer, but thank you.
Right, I mean, yeah, it's not really something that I can give you an unequivocal answer, because it's it's kind of a broad, issue that
Well, because we
the
have
possible
this
issues could
agreement on our
range.
board about, I don't think we should be writing letters every time something doesn't really happen.
Well, right, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but that's why you have to look at each one and as a board and with the help of your counsel and your managing agent, figure out how much, how big the threat is, how realistic it is that somebody else could be impacted, you have to analyze all of that and then make a decision.
I want to go back to something that Gene asked. If you go into Grand Central Terminal, not Grand Central Station, Grand Central Terminal, and you'll see signs, if you see something, say something. And I remember distinctly a case, I don't think it was New York, it might have been Boston, where the landlord had cameras and could actually see, I think it was 2 tenants bringing in stuff, and then he would, they were complaining about a leak in the bathroom, so he went up there and he was smelling strange chemicals, whatever, and they turned out to, but he didn't say anything, but he had them on video, and he also actually went to the apartment and was smelling all these strange chemicals. It turns out they were 2 terrorists, and the upshot of it was they bombed some public place, or whatever. It might have been Boston, I'm not sure. But I think there's an obligation, especially if you see it on video and you're catching something, as a courtesy, just to say, look, I got this video, and I don't know if there's anything to it, but to be on the safe side, because if there's harm done and somebody finds out you have the video or whatever, it's kind of goes back.
Right, I think that, from that perspective, yes, I think the issue is, it's on the one hand, telling the police seems obvious, if you see something, yeah. But that was the follow-up question, is do you tell, you don't have to tell anybody else. And again, it depends on the situation.
X and Y. If you do it again, you can call cops.
No, I mean, again, it depends on the situation. It depends on, whether it's something that you think is going to be an ongoing threat. If you turned it over to the police and they handled it, or if you, did whatever you felt needed to be done to secure the building and it's not going to happen again, then maybe not. But if it's something that you're concerned is going to be an ongoing threat, or was serious enough that it rises to a greater level, then maybe you should.
Any other questions? Mary, one more question, or you got a second bite of the apple yourself?
Yeah, just a quick...
Here you are.
Just a quick little response to that is we had a situation recently where some of our shareholders were driving dangerously out of our garage onto the Yonkers Street. So we didn't have too much to say about it, we were told. So I called the police, and they were willing, if we gave them just a general idea of when this was happening, that they would have a police presence there. So even though you may not be able to call the police and catch them at that moment, if they know that it's happening more than once or twice, they seem to be willing to put a police presence in the area, if that helps at all.
All right, final call for questions. If there are none, please join me in a round of applause for our panelists.